Welcome to the National Safety Council Congress and Expo. I'm Jill James with the Accidental Safety Pro, and we are recording live podcast sessions this week while we're here at the Expo. And my guest today is Regina McMichael with the Learning Factory. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So you know that the Accidental Safety Pro podcast is all about safety professionals like you and I telling our story about how did we accidentally fall into this profession, because so many of us simply did. And it sounds like you have a pretty compelling story about how literally an accident. So do you mind sharing with our audience?
Not at all.
How did you become a safety professional?
I was 20 years old, and I was young and recently married, and had been in love with this young man since I was 10 years old, and waited till I got old enough to be interesting. And finally, we started our relationship, got married, and he worked for a residential contractor, and he did roofing, and I got into safety the day he died. So he fell from a roof, 25 feet 11 inches. And we were just regular people living regular lives, and suddenly I was thrown into this world that I didn't understand. I couldn't figure out why he died. And so in my goal to try to understand that, I learned OSHA regs, I participated in the investigation, I demanded data from the agency, I demanded data from workers' comp commissions, autopsies, everything.
How old were you?
20.
20.
20.
That's a lot of kahunas for a 20-year-old in grief.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was, I didn't know yet who I was going to be as a human, as a person, and I didn't know that the things I was doing at that time and the strength I was showing, which I didn't know I was, I didn't know that that was a part of who I was as a core individual, and still wonder.
We're all learning. We're all continuing to learn.
It's for me, it was like, I had to find a reason for why he died. Because he wasn't a rock star. He didn't die in a plane crash. He was just a regular person. He had served in the military. He'd been a wild boy when he was young. He'd, survived some interesting things. And it was like, why did he die? And
How long had he been on the job?
He had worked construction on and off through his teen years and then after the military. And so with that particular company, probably less than a year, construction in the 80s, 1986. Sure. So when he fell and when he died, and when I was starting to investigate it and learn what was happening, the regulations, etc., it was interesting because that's when I started to find out that there wasn't any protection, there wasn't anything. And it wasn't just a lack of regs, it was a lack of complete and utter information.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, nobody was doing it. I didn't have any blame for the people that he worked for, because it wasn't like I could drive down the street and see anybody else protecting their workers.
It's not a known entity.
No. And so I was, my mother, you need to go to college, Take the workers' comp money and go to college. And the workers' comp experience was pretty ugly. It's not always pretty now, but in 1986 it was.
What was it like? I mean, they have an assigned dollar amount. I mean, isn't that sad to say? An assigned dollar amount for the death of a family member.
I wish it was that simple.
Okay.
They literally denied the claim and tried to blame him, as if that's relevant in any state.
Right.
But they gave it a shot, and I remember talking to my attorney, and he's like, "Oh, that's just where we start." And I'm like, "Why would anybody treat anyone like that and start there?" And so I actually settled for much less than what the law allowed, but it was a conscious decision because the angst, the hate, the not wanting to stay in a place of grief. I went to grief counseling, like the 5 steps, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to work through those really quickly because this kind of sucks. Don't like it. Don't want to stay here any longer.
Right.
And I actually thought I could will myself through it. How cute is that, right?
At 20, maybe we think we can will ourselves through grief, but although that's probably something that many people continue to experience.
Well, and I think there's something to be said for that, a choice to not stay in a place, and so I made those choices that I didn't want to stay in that really ugly, depressing place, and so with a small amount of money in my hand, I stumble off to community college, and there I was walking down the hallway, and on the bulletin board was this piece of paper talking about a safety academic program.
Oh man.
And I'm like, wait, what?
What just happened here?
And it was amazing. And so it was this brochure, and it had like the course listings in it. And so this is like 1987 now. And so it's got the little pieces of paper at the bottom that you're supposed to rip off with the phone numbers.
Yes, I remember.
But I'm holding the brochure, and I realized this is my destiny. And so I looked to my left, and then I looked to my right, and then I stole the whole thing.
I would have totally done the same. Totally done the same. So did you feel in that moment like, I'm going to avenge this, what had happened, and right the right thing?
Yes,
Yeah.
from the very beginning, I felt a necessity to try to right the balance. And I didn't even know what that meant very early on.
Sure.
But through my college time, and then very early on in my career, and it's interesting because I talk about this in the keynote that I speak to people about. I literally thought I was supposed to save one life, that one life was supposed to trade for the life that was lost. And that balance, that somehow that would explain why he died, because I had something I was supposed to do.
Right.
And so then it would make sense.
Mission accomplished.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and then I would be able to breathe that he didn't die for no reason at all. And the problem is, as you have probably experienced, and as most safety professionals that I talk to, it's almost impossible to leave the end of the day, to leave your career and say, I saved a life. I'm positive of it.
Yeah, right.
Because
We don't know.
we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know.
We don't
Police officers get to know, firefighters, doctors, but safety professionals, we just walk around hoping maybe...
Hoping today it mattered, right?
Maybe someone just says thanks.
Yeah, right? And hopefully we've saved thousands and thousands of lives in our
so.
work. I think so
so.
too. So righted it many times over.
And I figured out, for me, once I started training, how much I love to train, how much I love to connect with people, that I realized that me trying to save one person, me trying to directly impact you, was way too small. But if I could train people, and then they could then go out and impact 100.
That whole fishing analogy,
Yes.
teach them to fish and they'll do it.
Yes, and I thought, okay, so I won't find out if I helped, and I'm okay with that. You know, once I matured through my
I
career.
have to give that up. Yeah.
But it's interesting that we're talking about this, because this is probably the first public recording of this conversation. I have so many people in the 30 years I've been in the industry who come up and they're like, I didn't know any of this.
Wow.
And
What an honor. What an honor to have the story told here. So the community college, you're at the community college, you start your courses, you finish it.
Yep.
What's
2
the
years
first?
and 10 months.
Okay, congratulations, well done. What's the first job? Like, what did you decide to do?
So I went to work for the Highway Department for the state of Virginia.
That's funny, that was my first safety job.
I know, when I heard that, I thought that was really cool, actually.
Okay, state of Virginia,
Yep.
all right.
And oh my gosh, to work with people and to spend time with people and to train them was so awesome. My first training was probably 3 days into the job.
Wow.
I was handled...
Totally green.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, useless. And I was handed a carousel of slides. Yeah, age check there. And so I and it's on backing safety, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like,
Heavy equipment and backing it up.
you know, and they're like, don't run over
23 years
people.
old.
Yeah. And they're like, well, why would you back over somebody? Who would do that? And they're like, yeah, it's a thing. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's a thing.
okay. So I learned as I taught.
Yeah.
But confined space training, and there was an incident where I was in the confined space with my people, and we lost touch with above. And you know, I come out, and my guy topside is just covered in sweat, shaking, and he goes, I just canceled the 911 call.
Oh.
And he goes, because you taught me I can't go in.
Yeah. Oh man.
He's like, you
Listen.
said I couldn't go in. He goes, I thought you guys were down, and
Yeah.
I couldn't go in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you did right, man.
That's exactly it.
And it was like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's...
It worked. The
Yeah.
training worked.
That was powerful stuff.
And you're 20-some years old.
I know, I'm like, I did that.
Wow. And so how did you, as a 20-some-year-old female, and I've been in your position also at the highway department, what did you do to build street cred? Because it's a thing when you're young and female and you just got out of school and you don't know how to back up the actual truck.
When you're looking at the slides going, what does this one say?
Yeah.
This is a nice picture. What does it mean? You know, I don't know. I think I could look back and say, I think I did these things,
Yeah.
but at the time, I think it was just about having my heart in the right place. I really did care about these people. We had an incident where one of our vehicles was hit by a tractor trailer on the major interchange right outside of Washington, D.C. And I remember I had taught first aid CPR all day long, and I had gone to the site because I had to pass it to get home anyway, and it was awesome having lights in your car because you got to pass all the traffic. And so I get to the vehicle, and it is demolished. It is horrible. But my guys, one man, one woman, they weren't in the truck. And the reason they weren't in the truck was because one of the signs on the side of the road had fallen down. And you know how they always made the jokes about the guys who work for the highway department.
It takes two, 3, 4 people, one shovel. Yeah,
yep.
right.
Or what's orange and sleep 6?
Yeah.
VDOT truck.
Yeah.
And they, instead of ignoring something that was a hazard to the public, they turned around and walked back and did the right thing. And that's when the tractor trailer hit their vehicle. And they would have been in the vehicle had they not done the right thing. And when I saw them, I just lost it.
Yeah, right.
I was bawling my eyes out, and I'm like, you're the most beautiful people in the world.
I did my job, and you did your job.
I know.
It's like, that's the whole test of safety professionals, right? That they're going to perform the way we want them to perform when nobody's looking.
Yep.
And so you did your job, and they did theirs. How wonderful is that?
It is.
Wow. So how long were you at transportation, and then what happened next? What launched the next phase?
So I did that for about 14 months,
Okay.
I've always kind of let the universe give me some push.
Same.
And so there I was, and this opportunity presented itself to join the Associated General Contractors of America,
Okay.
the largest construction trade association
Yeah.
for general contracting in the U.S.
Yeah.
And so there I was heading off to a job with a suit and heels, and leaving my boots.
Very different. Yes, very different than steel toes you
Apparently
left
people
behind.
were making bets on how long I could make it, because you had to leave your boots behind. And I had an amazing boss. He was an amazing mentor, Pete Cheney, and Pete taught me another side of safety I hadn't seen. We got to develop product, we got to develop training, we made videos, and all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, this is a broad reach.
Different part of my career. Yeah.
And I got to work with some of the leading safety people in construction safety. I mean, some of the top people. And I didn't even know then what I was with. It's not until years later that I look back and I'm going, wow,
BCG was kind of a big thing.
Yeah. I'm like, my mentor is, past president of ASSP, past board member of the BCSP, fellow, and so I was so lucky to have this amazing opportunity and this exposure to know these really great minds and these people who were saving a lot of lives. And then I got recruited by, of all organizations, the National Association of Home Builders.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That was the universe again.
Yeah, way.
Yeah.
And during the interview, I said to my potential boss, I said, I need to tell you something before you hire me.
And what happened? What happened after you said that?
He was like, whoa, and let's not talk about it a lot. And I said, actually, I don't talk about it at all, so you're good to go. But it was because I wasn't ready to tell my story. I didn't start to tell this story for 28 years.
Yeah, I believe it.
And not because it was a secret, it just, I wanted people to judge who I was as a safety professional by the work that I was doing, not the perceived
You knew in
package.
your heart. And so, what did you do in that job? Like, what was the role that you were filling in that one?
It's almost like
Is
you
there
already.
more irony?
Yeah,
that goes
it's almost
with
like
this?
you know my story.
I don't.
I know.
I've
That's
never
what
heard it before.
that's what's so crazy is. The reason they brought me in was because they needed someone. I was the first full-time safety person they had, and the NAHB was actually a larger, much larger trade association than the AGC. But they represented so many small businesses around the world. I mean, home building, Americana doesn't get any more than that.
Right.
And the reason they needed someone full-time was because there was a regulation under development that I had been involved with at AGC, but they needed someone to dedicate themselves to it full-time, and they recruited to bring me in, and that regulation was fall protection.
Fall protection. Wow. Was it the residential fall protection
It
piece?
was the residential
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I only know this because I remember as an OSHA investigator at the time when that happened.
Yes.
And then having to learn what the regulation differences were
And how insane it was.
insanely different they were, and this little checklist that I had of if it's this scenario then this, and if it's this scenario then
And I
that. And
helped
so you helped
all
develop
of
that.
it. Yep.
That is fabulous.
So
And then we had an interpretation that came out. I helped write that, and developed a bunch of products, and it was amazing. And
what did that feel like?
You know how the whole little, the devil and the angel on your shoulder kind of thing or whatever. But one of the things that was particularly hard for me was as the agency was putting together some pretty stout language. And fairly so. People were dying. I get that, When you look at statistics from 1986, one of those numbers is my husband.
Yeah.
So I got all of that.
Yeah.
But I also got that if I wasn't going to be able to convince Kevin, my husband, to tie off to the roof, then he wasn't going to tie off to the roof.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have saved his life.
Yeah.
So we had a regulation with the best of intention, but it wasn't going to save anyone's life. And so, which is why NAHB at the time put a lot of political pressure to develop a special interpretation.
Sure.
And it gave the industry some time to catch up. Did they do it adequately?
And some options.
Yes. Was it enough at the time, whatever? No, they still waited around way too long. But going out and citing a whole bunch of people and it not making anyone better isn't helping either. We needed something that did all those things and more.
Step them in.
So, but just to add to the craziness of the story,
Yeah.
so there we are in, at the time, Assistant Secretary Joe Deere's office for the signing ceremony of the regulation. And, I'd love to say how important you feel going to a signing ceremony, but really we all wanted to be there just so we could get an advanced copy of the reg and find out what the implementation does.
What the heck is in here?
Yeah, how long do I have before I got to get product on the street?
I remember Joe Deere's signature on so many of the OSHA documents that I was using as guidance documents at the time. So yes,
an awesome
I saw
person.
that.
I say that with all my heart. He was an awesome leader, and I think he did a lot for the agency.
Yeah.
And so there we were in the signing ceremony, and they start passing out advanced copies of the reg, and it's 2 days before it'll get published in the Federal Register. And I flip it open, and I scan to the implementation date, and it is 9 years to the day
Whoa.
of my husband's death,
Whoa.
February 6th.
That is awesome.
So I'm looking at my boss at the time, and I'm like, "Do you see this?" And he goes, "I don't get it."
How many years later was that?
9 years to the day.
9 years.
9
Oh,
years to
you
the
had
day,
just
the
said
new-
that.
Yeah, so 9
Wow.
years it clicked in.
Oh man.
Yep.
Who was the first person you told that to? Did you call his mom, or what do you do?
It was my boss, because he was
Okay.
standing right next to me, and I'm holding the date and pointing at it, and he's like, "Why are you so insane? We got 90 days. We can work with that." And I'm like, "No, it's the date."
Wow.
I'm like, out of all the days in the year, there was 365 to choose from, and it's that one. Yeah.
What a story.
And you want to hear another one?
Yes. Yes. I love.
Because it doesn't
irony.
stop.
I love irony and the universe coming together.
I do too.
Because I'm still picturing you taking the poster off the wall in the community college.
I know, running out all thievery.
And then 9 years later, yeah.
So, so our wedding anniversary is April 28th, Worker Memorial Day.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yep.
You're in the right field.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in the right field.
And I actually went through a time after my son was born where I thought maybe I needed to leave the industry, that I wasn't on my right track. And it's interesting because that's when I learned that so many professionals struggle to stay in the industry,
Yes.
to feel relevant, to feel like they're
Yes.
helping.
We're always reinventing ourselves.
And I think it's the people that are truly successful are the ones that struggle with those things, so they can reinvent themselves. I think you're exactly right.
It's the struggle, and when you start feeling it, and then okay, is it time for me to move on to a new chapter, or do I need to reinvent kind of where I'm at and take a new trajectory to your path?
Absolutely.
So AGC, this is all happening. Did you stick around there for a while, and what's next?
So did home builders for almost 5 years, I think.
Okay.
And then I left to start a consulting business, and in part through some government grant work. So I was training home builders all across the country, and trying to get them to use fall protection, trying to get them to, trying to actually own a extension cord with a ground plug on.
Or at least plug it into a GFCI. Yeah. Here's a portable one. Use this. Yeah.
But the best part about it was, that was 5 years of hostile audiences.
Yeah.
That was honing my skill as a trainer. as an influencer to people who didn't understand, because they're like, how can we do this all? And it's like, can you do anything? Could you do one thing today, one thing tomorrow? I'm like, don't look at it in total because it's too overwhelming.
Yeah.
I'm like, try to figure out what's right and do what's right.
Talk about hostile audiences. I know what you mean when you say that, but for anyone who's doing training or is in front of audiences right now, whether it's on big stages like you do now, or around the world like you do now, or someone who's just in front of a room full of people in their company, there's something to be said for your audience and the life that it brings or the life that it doesn't bring. And so when you say hostile audience, maybe describe that, and how do you work through that as a trainer, and then flip it around to when you have one that gives you life, because those are fun.
I actually, when I teach about class culture, and that as the trainer, as the facilitator, that we have a responsibility to build that culture, even if you walk into a hostile room. Hostile being 30 people who don't want to be there. It's another OSHA training class. Perhaps it's even punishment for an accident, or something that's happened, or somebody had a near miss, and so they're all getting retrained on ladders, even though that may or may not be the issue.
You're right.
And may not be the solution. And so so that hostile audience are the guys that are forced to be there. And I'm from the East Coast, so I say guys for everything. I should probably preface that. But
guys means people for the purposes of this podcast.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
it.
obviously 2 women sitting here, we're definitely equal opportunity. But I feel like it's our job as the professionals, and particularly as trainers, that we have to turn it around. We have to get the passion inside them. We've got to get them to appreciate the person standing next to them. We've got to get them to remember that it can happen. And that's what was interesting about the bulk of my career is I never said, and let me tell you why this matters, because it does happen to regular guys just like you. It happened to my husband. I never pulled that card.
Yeah.
I always felt like it was my job to get them there without that. And I had the signature at the bottom of the form that said, I can learn nothing from a woman.
I've experienced those audiences.
And I'm like, guess what you can learn? You can learn that I'm going to rip this up and no client will ever see it. That's what you're going to learn from a woman today. Because it's like, do you actually think I'm going to turn that into somebody? So it kind of cracked me up. But, it's you're not going to get everybody. You're not going to get 100% believers.
Right.
But if I can get 4 guys in the front of the room with their arms crossed in front of them, angry,
relax.
yeah, and then actually start to lean. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Right.
I'll take that. And so that was a lot of it. Was I was like, I just tried to get them to do little pieces. And for hardcore compliance people, they would have difficulty with my approach because I wasn't about you have to be perfect.
Right.
Because I felt like, can we try perfect tomorrow? Today, could we just not kill you?
It's the don't be a safety cop kind of thing.
Yes.
And I think that many of us in this profession have been safety cop when you didn't know what else to do.
Yes.
Or until you honed your skill enough to figure out there's a business gray and how to ride that, and then how to move the needle toward the direction you want it, knowing that you're not going to get 100% right from the first time.
But it takes confidence. You
does.
need a great mentor to help you, be able to say I didn't get 100 and say nobody gets 100.
Yeah.
Let's start in the right direction.
And some days training in front of audiences just isn't going to go well. It's not going to be out of the park every single time. It's really a bummer because you go into it hoping it will, but sometimes audiences are flat, sometimes you're flat. So anybody who's doing training should certainly know that don't think it's a failure, because this happens and it's cyclical and it happens. I'm sure it still happens to you, happens to me, and we never know which audience it's going to be and which day it's going to be.
But when you get the good one.
Oh, it's awesome, and you
it's
live
so
on
awesome.
it for a long time.
You do.
At
You
least
have to
us
feed.
extroverts do.
You have to feed on it,
Yeah,
and you
you
have
do.
to accept that this is all you got. I was unnamed country, unnamed city. Don't want to offend anybody, but I was in a Nordic country, and it was crashing and burning. And this was in a 20-country tour, and I had worked in countries where it wasn't supposed to be effective, and it was awesome. And then here I was in this crash and burn situation, and this gentleman comes to me during break, and he just looks at me, and he says, "Some people don't have ears." And I was like, is this a translation thing?
What? Yeah, what does that mean?
And basically it was, some people don't want to hear. They don't have ears to hear what you say.
Yeah.
And that was such a relief, because I went back in the room and I focused on the people who had ears.
Yeah.
And I taught them the best I could, and I tried to impact their lives the best way I could. And I stopped worrying about the people who didn't have ears, because you know how they can control you, and you're trying so hard to get them on the team, and then it's like, no, I'm going to focus on the people who have ears.
Yeah.
So that's been really helpful for me. Just to, if it's crashing and burning, if you got 3 people that care, let those 3 people, because they're there, and they matter too.
And there's something about knowing your audience as well, and taking just a little bit of time before you get going and trying to figure out, like, why are those people with their arms crossed? What is going on here? I remember specifically I was doing some training. I don't remember what I was training on. It might have been the OSHA 10 hour or something. And the room was full of scientists. But I didn't know that there was a room full of scientists until maybe an hour or 2 into the thing, and they were just like, whoo-hoo, not engaged at all. And I'm like, oh, there's scientists, and I'm using a different level of vernacular. So when I started talking about heat stress, and I started talking about use a sling psychrometer, all of their eyes lit up like, ooh, she's talking about something technical. And then they're like, what is that? How does it work? How does it measure relative humidity? And they wanted to know all of it, and it was a win for the rest of the time. But I didn't do my homework to find out who is my audience and who should I bring. Which level of vernacular do I need to bring for that audience?
That is so critical. That when I do a lot of train the trainer. And that's such a critical thing, that people just think that they can just go up there and be awesome, or just go up there and be technically capable. And it's so much more than that. And I've one of the things I've really tried to teach trainers is that the moment you're ready to acknowledge that the 1 hour or the 8 hours that you have those people, that it is all about them and not about you, not even a little bit. As soon as it's all about them, the class will go so much better. And so and it's so simple and it's so freeing. And so I'm like, get over yourself. Don't try to over impress a bunch of scientists with too much info, because that if you'd known too much too early, that'd have been the alternative.
Yeah, then it would have been too many questions. I would have been out of my wheelhouse really quickly, and they would have known the emperor had no clothes.
Yeah. But it's taking the time to learn, being ready to be authentic. I think that's really critical. People are afraid to be themselves. And so that's something I try to teach people, is just be authentic. And then when they ask you something you don't know, don't try to figure it out at the moment. Take it during lunch, get back to them later, whatever it is. We know that rule,
We do. You don't have to, don't feel like you have to know the answer immediately. I think that's something else that you grow into in any profession, particularly in ours, that you don't have to feel that, oh my gosh, somebody asked me a question, I've got to know it right now. Don't make anything up. I don't know. I'll get back to you on that. And you work your network then, or your resources.
I'm sure in your career you got to show me where that is.
Yes, always, like digging through the regulation book trying to find.
And you can never do it under
pressure. Yes.
I'm going to hang up. Give me 5 minutes.
And then I'll find it. Then I'll find it. So you've had your own consulting company, The Learning Factory, for how long now?
Well, that's actually the second consulting company I've had. I had a place in between. As crazy and as unsatisfying as my workers' compensation interaction in the early part of my safety existence was, I ended up joining an insurance carrier for 7 years.
Okay.
And it was really great, and that's where I honed my training skills. They actually invested in me learning more. I figured out a lot of the things that I did as a trainer had a name. That it was part of instructional systems design. It was an actual thing. I wasn't just getting good at what I was doing because I was lucky. I actually was kind of figuring out things. And so when I started getting formalized education in training, design, and development, I was like, oh, they have a name for that.
I've been doing that for years.
Yeah, I just thought that was fun. And it's a thing.
It's a thing.
So that helped me a lot. And then that's when it occurred to me that the industry in general, we're at an extraordinary disadvantage. We are forced to think of training as almost an extra part of our job. You have your full-time job, and then, you're technically competent, therefore you should be able to train, go be awesome and make everybody really, really smart, and you have no extra time to do it.
You have no skills as a trainer,
And so I tell some of the people I work with that if I want to be overly dramatic, and I do, that bad training really could kill. It really could. You know, we slam a bunch of unnecessary information into people's heads. You know, we get so caught up on structure and on the regulatory structure.
And it
instead
sounds
of,
like Charlie Brown's teacher.
Yes. And then they go out and they do something unsafe, and we call them ugly names, and we want to blame them.
Blame the victim. Right.
Yeah. When really, did we do the best we could do as the profession to get that knowledge into their head? And so it's become kind of my personal, goal, my effort to get the industry moving forward on great training. And so that's why I'm a big believer in the BCSP's Certified Environmental Safety and Health Trainer certification, because I think that's one more step in legitimizing who we are as a profession. How do we explain to our bosses that we need extra time, we need extra money, we need extra people if we're not ready to legitimize the work as real work?
So take just a second to explain that program. So if people are listening are like, oh, there's an actual place you can go for help in our profession for training. Explain what that is for a second.
So the Board of Certified Safety Professionals, the BCSP, which I'm an ambassador for, so disclaim now.
Nicely done.
Yeah, I'll disclaim now. But so they took on a certification several years ago, and that's the Certified Environmental Safety and Health Training Certification. And what's interesting about it, though, is that a lot of people have some misunderstanding. So taking the test doesn't make you a better trainer. It's preparing for the test that makes you a better trainer. Okay. And so, and that's where you're going to learn training theory. That's where you're going to learn instructional design. That's when you're going to learn all of that stuff. So people come up to me and they go, I've been training for 20 years. Can I pass the test? And so I'll say, I'm going to say 10 different terms to you.
Do you know what they are?
Yeah. And if they resonate, go for it. And then I'll start throwing some things out, and they're like, I have no idea what those things are. And I said, then let me help you with the right resources so you can move in that direction.
It's actually a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Knowledge transfer and how you do it with adults is a thing.
It's a thing.
And there's a science to it.
When I learned adult learning principles, I was like, oh my gosh, that was huge for me to uncover Malcolm Knowles and all of that stuff, and geeking out here for a minute, but you get that.
Good geeking.
I know, thank you. So, but so to suddenly go, I was just doing that because it worked one time, and then it worked 5 times, and then I find out, no, that's real theory. That's exactly how we're supposed to behave as facilitators and trainers. So that's been a big push for me, is to try to get the industry, even if I can't get everybody certified, if I can get people to at least acknowledge that training is real work, that it's hard, that it takes education or at least professional development to get you to that place.
What a great tip for people listening. I think that's wonderful. So you stayed with Zurich for a while, and then you started the Learning Factory?
Yes.
Okay.
So I finally did that.
Okay.
And it's really funny because everyone was like, you don't have safety in your name. And that was because my focus needed to be on the learning side, and I didn't want to limit. It's not just safety training, although it's primarily safety training, but it's so much about the train the trainer. And then a lot of my clients, after I work with them, they're like, can you do what you just did and not say safety and say something else? And I'm like, yeah, actually I can. Your leadership training's awesome. We just want you to say quality instead of safety. Okay. Because those concepts don't change. So right now I've got a client, and it's a chemical manufacturer, and so I'm coming in and doing an 8-hour program on communication skills for their research and development department, which is almost exclusively PhD chemical engineers.
Talk about bringing a different game. Yeah.
They're like, can you do that? And I'm like, yes.
Sure. Yes, it's going to be a fun challenge.
It is going to be so much fun. So I'm actually super excited about it. But it's bringing that idea that you take the time to connect with people and learn about them. And then they walk out the door and they go, I'm better today than I was yesterday.
I just blogged about this sort of theory last week. I see you, I am here. It's like having that intentional exchange with someone and really seeing people who they are, instead of somebody that did something right or somebody that did something wrong, but we're seeing one another and having an authentic exchange so we can have a real conversation about how do we learn? Why do I care about you? Why do you care about learning this, rather than barking out rules and having an authentic exchange with one another. So you're here at the Expo.
Yep.
And you are training this week.
4 times.
4 times. You are going to be so exhausted by Friday or Sunday or whenever you get to kick back. So tell the audience, what are you training on? And if someone's here at the expo and they want to get in on one of your classes, what are you talking about?
So I'll actually be training on the expo floor tomorrow.
Okay.
I'll be doing a 1-hour safety training ninja program. That's my signature program on how we can train better as professionals.
Okay.
Then I'll be doing an 8-hour program on safety training ninja on Thursday, so post-conference. Okay. Then I'll be doing getting a seat at the C-suite on Wednesday.
Interesting.
And so that's geared towards safety professionals, and that was geared towards, I think, the self-limiting behaviors of our profession. Not our fault, no one taught us otherwise, but we've self-limited with this silo of the moral imperative of safety. That's valuable, it's important, I'm all about it personally, obviously, but the moral imperative does not necessarily drive business.
That's right.
And so
how do you do both?
Yes, and I think that's a cultural shift that we're seeing in the industry, huge.
Yeah.
And for me, I think that one of the things I can do is share just my experiences of working with so many small businesses throughout my career, to be able to teach them that, if we can tie the safety initiative to profit, to better behavior, to quality, to whatever that company needs on that day, yes, we're in a much better place. But this siloing of we're doing this and this is safety and we should do it this way. And I'm like, I get with a company, I'm like, oh, you're 5S'ing. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, let's 6S. Yeah. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, let's put another column on for safety. Yeah. And they're like, well, don't we need another thing? And I'm like, don't you have enough things? I'm like, no, I'm going to piggyback on something that's working. I'm not, I'm a good consultant. I'm really okay if you learn and move on.
Invent a new a new acronym.
Exactly. And so getting to the seat of the C-suite is talking about how, as safety professionals, if we're not reading annual reports of the companies we work for, that's on us. Right. If we don't know how to communicate with the executive level because we don't understand them, we haven't taken the time to learn them, we don't understand the corporate culture at the executive level, that's on us.
Yep. How to pitch an idea in a way that speaks to their decision making.
Yeah. I need $2 million to reguard the machines.
Oh, what's that going to do for me?
Exactly.
Where's my ROI?
Exactly. Yeah. And then when they look at you and they go, "What's ROI?" and you're like, "Okay, let's talk some more."
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, so it's, I think for me, connecting that side of it. It goes back to my personal history, despite the fact that there wasn't, necessarily a direct relationship between those things. But as I progressed through my career and I saw the necessity of, business has to see it. It can't just be a moral imperative, because if moral imperative did the trick, people wouldn't speed.
That's right.
They wouldn't do some of the things that we do. We're human beings. We make mistakes.
We wouldn't be texting and driving.
Gosh, I know. That one's a scary one.
So that's you at the expo this week.
Yes.
That's wonderful. You mentioned the safety training ninja. Did I get that right?
Yes.
You're have written a book.
Yes.
Tell the audience about the book.
Should be out before the end of the year, published by the American Society of Safety Professionals.
Wow.
And
its title is?
Safety Training Ninja.
Excellent.
I know, not too tough to remember.
And so how will people find it?
They'll be able to go onto ASSP's website, or if you follow me on social media, I will be talking about it constantly.
Okay.
But the idea is that there are very few or almost no, and certainly not current, safety training books for safety professionals out there. And if you're hearing this podcast, or if you have ever seen me teach, you'll hear me in the book, because it's just me talking, and I just happen to be typing instead of having it filmed or something like that.
You have an audio version of this book coming? Because that'll be fun too.
I know I should. I'm like, oh, learning about podcasts. This is good, because I should probably just do a few, because just the stories alone. So lots of stories infused, but utilizing the classic ADDIE instructional design system, so that which is a process, and safety people get processes. So teach them instructional design process, go through it, and then show how it makes sense in the safety world with safety examples. And so that's what the book is specifically designed for that. And then I'm hopeful that it'll help people. Everybody's waiting. Everyone keeps asking, when does it get published? I'm like, soon.
So people can find you on LinkedIn, Regina McMichael, and The Learning Factory, and then the Safety Training Ninja. Yep. Those are all keywords people can search for to find you. That's awesome.
And then reginamcmichael.com.
Okay.
Yep. So that's my speaker website, where I actually do a lot of keynoting and work with large organizations, small organizations, trade associations, and talk about my journey in the profession and hopefully help their people.
Right.
And so that's out there as well.
So what's next for you after this? besides like breathing for a moment, where are you off to next? Like, what's your next speaking gig?
So my next speaking gig is at group of chemical engineers.
Okay.
I've had a busy 3 weeks.
Right,
I was
okay.
just in Alaska at their state program for ASSP, and then Hawaii right before that.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's been a little
Nice
crazy couple of
gig.
weeks.
You went from hot to cold. You kind of saw it. Okay.
And now
Excellent.
Houston.
And now Houston.
So yeah, a little crazy. Although it's very chilly here today, so it does feel kind of rough around the edges. But so the next gig is Richmond, Virginia, and I'll actually get to see family because that's where I was living way back when. And then things tend to get a little quiet around December, which is good. I'll be able to work on some actual work.
That's good. And your book's going to be coming out.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
And
That's
then
excellent.
then things blow up in January.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast today. That is so fun, and I'm sure people are listening. They're searching things that you've said, and they're looking forward to the book. As am I. Thank you to everyone for listening today, and thanks for the work that you do to send your workers home, including your temporary workers, safely at the end of every day. If you'd like to listen to more of our podcast episodes, you can search for us, the Accidental Safety Pro, at the podcast player of your choosing. And if you'd like to send us a question, you can do that by emailing social@vividlearningsystems.com. Until next time, thank you for joining.